Hello again. We are going to continue on to have the second half of the Road to American Revolution. And where we left off was the Intolerable Acts. So remember, after the Boston Tea Party, the British issued the Intolerable Acts. For a review on that, go to the previous video. So the first Continental Congress was formed as a result of these Intolerable Acts. So this is kind of a step above the Stamp Act Congress. Stamp Act Congress, you have 9 of the 13 colonies meet and discuss the Stamp Act and ways to repeal it, and they meet in New York. With the first Continental Congress, you have 12 out of the 13 colonies, not Georgia, but 12 of 13 colonies meet in Pennsylvania in that middle colony, tackling that central question with how do we oppose these coercive acts? How do we address this? So we're not at war yet. We're about 3 years away from declaring war. So we're not there. We still want to problem solve with the British. And the results are really impressive. 2 major results. Number 1, we have the Virginia Declaration of Rights. And this is Virginia basically saying that colonists have a right to life, liberty, and property. And this is really important because you're starting to get a lot of colonial diversity here. A lot of other colonies are seeing that this isn't just a Massachusetts problem or a Bostonian problem. This might be a problem that all of the colonies need to address. In addition, the Suffolk resolves are passed, and all colonists should form a militia. This declares the coercive acts void, right? Gone, done, eliminated, we're not following this. Again, this is also a really impressive step because it's saying that we're not ready for war, we're not going to declare war, but we feel like the British are being rather antagonistic. And so we want to be ready just in case this escalates rather quickly. And it is going to, starting in 1775. With the battles of Lexington and Concord. So General Gage is the general who's in charge of Massachusetts at this time. He's in charge of Boston. Remember, the coercive acts said that we could have no colonial government anymore, and General Gage was going to be in charge of Boston, along with, of course, his Redcoat militia that are quartered now in the city. So General Gage had learned through spies that the colonial militia had a stockpile of weapons in Concord. And you can see Concord is on the map with that rifle there. And one reason why the colonials had a big stockpile of weapons is mainly because of the French and Indian War. They had gathered a stockpile. But also, if you think back the slide I just talked about with the First Continental Congress, we are preparing for war. April 1775, Gage orders his men to take all the weapons at Concord, right? And so right now we have 2 schools of thought. We have the British who are saying, oh my gosh, the colonials are going to attack us at any moment. We can't trust them, right? Think about tar and feathering. Think about dressing as Native Americans and dumping tea in the harbor. The colonials can't be trusted. And then the second school of thought is from the Bostonian or the colonial perspective. You have these colonials who are thinking, oh my gosh, the British can't be trusted, right? Think about the Boston Massacre. They sent that tea. The Redcoats can't be tried in a colonial court. They're taking away our freedom of assembly. We can't trust the British. And this all comes to a big kind of explosion when patriotic spy Paul Revere learns that Gage is going to go to Concord and take the weapons with his men. So he goes on this midnight ride where he says, the British are coming, and warns the British, warns the colonials that the British are going to come. And if you look down at the bottom, this is probably the main reason why we have the Second Amendment in the Constitution, right? If you look at the Intolerable Acts, where we had to quarter soldiers and we couldn't assemble, and we didn't have certain trials for redcoats, we get really angry at these British actions, and we end up putting these in our Constitution when we do gain our independence. So the battles of Lexington and Concord, we have 70 Minutemen, and they're called Minutemen because they're the colonial militia that could prepare for battle in 1 minute fast. They heard Paul Revere's warning, and they met 700 redcoats at Lexington. And we don't know who shot the fire first, but this is known as the shot heard round the world. The British ultimately won, killing 8 patriots, and this battle lasted from Lexington and then continued on to Concord, a neighboring town. But this is really important because you could consider this the first battle of the Revolutionary War. Again, we're 1 year out from the war, so we're not really declaring war quite yet. But this is the first kind of skirmish between these 2 sides. And you can see there from these drawings that this is, taking place really in these neighborhoods, in these towns, and this really got a lot of people involved who might not have otherwise been involved because they're not located, in a port town or a major city. So this leads to the Second Continental Congress. And in the Second Continental Congress, there were several accomplishments to take note. One, we set up our own post offices in order to organize correspondence between the different patriots. We made treaties with Native Americans to make sure that they would be fighting on our side, unlike the French and Indian War, when you have a number of natives who are fighting alongside with the French. We formed a Continental Army. We named George Washington the general, which again is really key because that is the New England colonies really shoring up support from the Southern colonies. And we agree to have the olive branch petition at the Second Continental Congress. And this is really our last full stop attempt at peace. And we basically say, "Dear King George, I love you, you're great, and you're awesome, but could you remove the redcoats from our colonies? Thanks. We love you, King George, but can you stop quartering your troops in our homes? Thanks. We love you, King George, but can you give us a seat in Parliament? Okay, thanks." Right? So we make our list of demands, and King George completely rejects it. I'm not sure what he did with it. Maybe he used it as toilet paper at some point when he really needed to go number two. But the point is, he did not take this seriously at all. And this leads to the Battle of Bunker Hill. So we are still a year away from officially declaring war. Remember, if you're going to have this correspondence back and forth from the colonies to England, it's going to take some time to see if diplomacy can work first. Meanwhile, June 17th, 1775, American troops discovered the British were planning on sending troops from Boston to surround the city. And of course, this is not a good look, specifically after the Redcoats tried to take all of the weapons at Concord. So 1,000 colonial militiamen built fortifications overlooking Boston. 2,200 British forces marched to Breed's Hill, where the colonial militiamen built one of their fortifications. And after 2 successful stances, the colonials lost the hill. So again, when this happened, this is technically, again, not really a battle in the American Revolution because we haven't declared independence quite yet. But you can see, again, this is another reason why we might be inclined to declare war. So despite losing the battle, though, it was definitely a morale builder for the colonial militia. If the colonial army stood strong, they could defeat the British, right? So again, important before and after. This is after the battles of Lexington and Concord, but definitely before we declare independence. So it's important to take note Thomas Paine's writing of Common Sense in 1776. He said it was written by an Englishman. He didn't put his name officially on it, possibly because this is treasonous. But when it came to his analysis in Common Sense, should the 13 colonies declare independence from Great Britain? Well, to him, the answer was pretty much common sense. He writes, "There is something exceedingly ridiculous in the composition of monarchy. For all men being equals, no one by birth could have the right to set up his own family in perpetual preference of others. To say that reconciliation is our duty is truly farcical. The first king of England was a Frenchman, and half the peers, right, or the members of the House of Lords, are descendants from the same country. By the same method of reasoning, England ought to be governed by France. Common sense will tell us that the power which hath endeavored to subdue us is of all others the most improper to defend us." So again, if we break this down, number one, monarchies are ridiculous. Number two, if all men are born equal under God, how can a king be born better? 3, history is built upon rebellion, wars, and setting up new kingdoms. And lastly, we can never trust the English, again, after the battles of Lexington and Concord. So it's inevitable we need to declare our independence. Despite that, of course, in this Second Continental Congress, which continued meeting, we have debates. John Adams, who famously at this point had defended the Redcoats during the Boston Massacre, says, "Before God, I believe the hour has come. My judgment approves this measure, and my whole heart is in it. all that I have and all that I am and all that I hope in this life, I am now ready here to stake upon it. And I leave off as I began, that live or die, survive or perish, I am for the Declaration. It is my living sentiment, and by the blessing of God, it shall be my dying sentiment. Independence now and independence forever. Right? So in this speech, he's saying, I feel this in my heart. Like, this is what we need to do, and this is the right time. So you could tell that he did take a thoughtful weighing of all of the facts. However, I do want you to know that it wasn't as easy as just saying, oh, we have Lexington and Concord, we have Bunker Hill, let's declare independence. John Dickinson, in the speech to the Second Continental Congress, July 1st, argued against John Adams, saying, I know the name of liberty is dear to each one of us, but have we not enjoyed liberty even under the English monarchy? Shall we this day renounce that to go and seek it in I know not what form of republic, which will soon change into a licentious anarchy and popular tyranny? So in this speech, John Dickinson is saying, hey, we had this period of salutary neglect and we had freedoms. We could go back here again. I believe that we can. And he's basically arguing that if we take this path, we are going to be a country formed based on rebellion, and we might always constantly be rebelling. Ultimately, it was decided that that the United States would declare independence, and there you have John Hancock, writing his name on the Declaration of Independence, really large, so that King George can read his name without his glasses on. And that's again specifically because John Hancock had a bit of an issue from early on with the Navigation Acts and specifically with closing the ports during the Intolerable Acts. So we declare independence. And in the Declaration of Independence, we have the preamble. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve a political ban, they should declare the causes which impel them to separate. So sometimes you're going to need to break up. And in this breakup letter, you need to tell them why. So the second thing is we're going to declare our rights. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, right? This is a republic. We're all agreeing to be part of this government. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute a new government. 3, here's my list of grievances, and this is quite long, and it basically is pretty repetitive. He has made judgment dependent on his will alone, right? Which means he's just capricious and arbitrary, King George. He has dissolved the representative house. He has imposed taxes on us with our consent. He has quartered soldiers. He has cut off our trade. He has cut away our trading charters. He has suspended our legislators, and a lot more grievances listed. And then part 4, just so you know, at the end of this Declaration of Independence, in case you don't know yet, we therefore, in the name and by authority of the good people of these United States, solemnly publish and declare that these United Colonies are and right ought to be free and independent. So this is them saying that we are not doing this as a monarchy or as a small body of people. We are doing this representative of the whole of the colony. So that's it. The end. Next time, the American Revolution, when your ex basically refuses to go away.
No problem. Period.
Okay. Put down your video. Play your music again.
Nice banana squash with sunflower seeds and bacon. Oh, good. Just like throw the hand over the eyes. So I should pass you around the advisor for all items.
New message.
Exactly. If it's not the good job doing the working hard, because I already seen that one.
Alexa, review my messages.
2 from Mom F. 2 from Mom F.
I love you, Waylon. Good job working hard.
Is there another one?
Received about 2 hours ago.
But I know I am working hard all the way. Can you believe it? I'm looking hard. No, no, 10-minute break. I made a laptop or something meaning about. Yeah. So cool. Bye. I linked my
Received in the
notes.
last 5 minutes.
Very cool, guys.
It's not really a lasso to like long. It's kind of a thing so when you walk your horses, you don't use a long lasso. It's short, so you just walk it down. And that's what I'm going to use if the Halloween party at Michelle's house has the horses. I'm